to what I've come to appreciate as the three different spheres of human cognition. Right? Cognition is just simply everything that happens inside of our mind, not the brain. Right? The brain is different. That's actual physical matter. The mind's something different. Right? Say, for example, we were to do a study on neurons. Say, for example, we were to do a study on brain matter, on the various spheres within the brain. You can see this stuff. If a person was to die and you were to open them up and pull out the brain and get your scalpel out and start dissecting, you could actually see various parts of the brain. Right? But the mind has to be different, because if you were to cut up the mind, or if you were to open up the human body and pull out the brain and cut it up, where exactly do you find thoughts? Where exactly do you find beliefs? Where's the beliefs stored? Where do emotions live? Like, actually, is there a little box in there somewhere, a little kind of room, a little compartment? Of course, it doesn't exist, right? Biologists understand this. All right, but you've got to understand that biology is a hard science. We would refer to that as an empirical science. Psychology isn't an empirical science, which means it's all theory-based. It's observation-based. The wise mind is a rare psychological state that a person can occupy in the context of their day-to-day life. They can occupy. I'm not saying all people do, because all people most certainly don't. What does it mean to be wise? What would you say it means to be wise? Are you wise? Am I wise? Who determines what's wise and what's not wise? We all do, right? From our perception. And the only problem with perception is that we each have a completely different one, right? We all have a different perception on people and things because our perspective is all completely unique. How flexible are you in your thinking? How adaptive are you in your perceiving? Is there any wiggle room in your beliefs for changing your mind? Do you believe that you are a certain way? Do you believe that you are a certain kind of person? Have you ever changed your mind about yourself at some point in the past? Do your beliefs and worldviews and perspectives actually serve you? Are they helping you? Do they complement your life? Do they benefit the lives of other people? Or are you just really fixed and rigid and stubbornly clinging on to the best ideas that you've been able to come up with? Right. So, these are good questions we can all benefit from asking ourselves at some point. Let's start off by exploring the emotional part of our mind. So I want to dissect the mind here into three different components. That's what I want to do. We're not dissecting the physical brain, we're dissecting the mind, which is invisible matter. We can't see it, we can only surmise. All right, there might very well be 50 different parts of the human mind, but I can't see them yet. I can only see these three parts. All right, and I've studied and I've researched. So there's the emotional part of our mind. The emotional part of our mind causes a lot of people a lot of problems, because some people live their whole lives inside of this emotional part of their mind. Are you an emotional person? Would you define yourself as an emotional person? Is that who you are? Is that how you were born? Is this just within you? Do you reckon there's any wiggle room for changing? Is there any opportunity that you could make some modifications in this? Well, let's have a look and see. The emotional mind tends to be regressive. Do you know what I mean by regressive? Picture a 2-year-old child or 3-year-old child, and you take this child into the toy store. Now, as a mature and responsible adult, you know that it is not wise to give children every single thing that they ask for, because children can end up learning entitlement and they can end up learning ungratefulness and bad attitudes and things like this. So you know better, of course, but little child hasn't learned this yet. Little child goes in a toy store and just looks at, Transformers, pink bunny rabbits, unicorns, rainbows, Lego, I want it all, I want. All right, so what happens if you say, no, I want doesn't get? Or you say, you can have one toy today. And if you want that, you can maybe get that for your birthday or maybe for your Christmas, right? Which is what responsible parents would do. But little child wants it all right now, right? Little child hasn't learned that, we don't always get what we want when we want it in life just yet. So what does little child do? You see the bottom lip starts going and, maybe some tears come out. in an attempt to manipulate mum or dad into buying all these toys, which you couldn't afford anyway. So the little child now is crying and it behaves all emotionally. And some parents will say, oh, okay, and they'll fold because it's just going to be easier and it saves all the tears. Other children will, other parents will fold and buy all the toys because, oh, don't be sad, don't be sad. Other parents will say, no tears, stop it, no, I want doesn't get. We don't get everything that we want in life. All right, that just breeds entitlement. So, regressive behaviour, we'll see it throughout society. We'll see it in fully grown adults, right? We will, right? Think about the last time you had a conversation with a fully grown adult who didn't get what they were wanting, all right? Maybe they got dumped. Now, listen, it's part of our human experience. None of us are perfect. I'm not being detrimental of any group of people here whatsoever. I am just saying that regression is an emotional way of living life. Right? We learn how to regress as we're young. We learn how to live in a way, use our emotions to sometimes manipulate people and get what we want. Think about it. Babies do this. Babies cry. Mum and dad come a-running. Right? Children cry. Sometimes they'll get what they want. Mum and dad will usually still come a-running. And then children become fully grown adults. And when they cry, hopefully someone will come a-running. Hopefully someone will listen. Hopefully someone will be there. All right? Listen, these are learned behaviours. Right, learned behaviours. We just have some behavioural strategies that are more effective than others. Right, what do you think is the more effective behavioural approach to take towards people? Say, for example, you're not getting what you want from someone. Right, do you think the mature approach is to cry, turn on the waterworks, or do you think the more mature approach would be to negotiate? See if you could reason with this other person, perhaps even negotiate, find a little bit of compromise. Right, well, if you can give me this, I can maybe give you that, and maybe we can meet somewhere in the middle. Of course. All right, the wise, mature approach would be to find compromise. All right, but the regressive approach is, I'm not getting what I want. All right, and you'll see this in many fully grown adults who haven't yet learned how to emotionally regulate, which is what CBT helps us to understand how to do. So the emotional mind can often be unreasonable, right? Do you know people who take temper tantrums? Do you know people who lose their temper? All right, what kind of people do you think prison's full of? People who have done a good job of managing and controlling their temper, or people who perhaps haven't learned how to manage their temper as effectively as what they otherwise could have done? That's right, you have guessed correct. Right, all matters of unreasonableness tend to spawn from the emotional mind. Why? Because the emotional mind is generally reactive. You know the difference between being reactive and responsive. Right, we are reactive in things where when we don't have any idea or any comprehension whatsoever that there's a relationship between our thoughts and our feelings. If people can't see this, they'll generally justify their behaviours, because of how they felt. I've done this because I just felt this, because you made me feel like this. Right, so it's very, very easy for people to live life from this place of complete irresponsibility. Right, and blaming other people, blaming other things as being the reasons why they said and done the things that they said and done. All right. We become more effective in life. We become naturally more empowered when this finger of blame that can so easily be pointed in every other direction other than us starts getting pointed a little bit closer to us. Right. This is essentially what self-reflection and self-awareness is all about. Never mind what other people are saying or doing. Why am I saying and doing what I'm saying and doing? What am I really trying to achieve here? Say I'm turning on the waterworks. What do I really want? Do I want attention here? Do I want sympathy? Do I want a cuddle? What do I want? Do I want a pay rise? Why? What's this stuff going to give me? What is motivating my behaviour? Right? This is the foundation of self-awareness, folks. All right, so emotionally people tend to be quite reactive, also quite disconnected. I mean, think about it. How easy is it to sustain a healthy relationship with a highly emotional person? people who fly off the handle, 1 minute they're happy, next minute they're sad. We refer to people like this as being inconsistent. Very, very difficult to trust inconsistent people. Why? Because we don't know where we stand with them. We've got no idea whether our words are going to get taken out of context, misjudged, assumed the worst of. And no one likes being assumed the worst of, but people who live life in a reactive, emotional way, 9 times out of 10 are not aware of what they're doing. They can become very, very tiring people to be around, right? It's a huge reason why many relationships end in divorce after so many years. Either it will be the man who's highly emotional, hasn't developed his ability to regulate yet, and the wife or the partner says, I've had enough of you. You're like a big child. You're like a big child. Or likewise, you got the man, and then you got the woman who's forever in tears. The guy says, I've had enough of this. I've just had enough. All right? Emotive people can become really, really tiresome to be around. All right? Just saying. So you don't want to stay in this camp for the rest of your life. You want to evolve. But what do you evolve into? That's the question. Well, you could evolve into something a bit more reasonable, something a bit more rational. And that's going to seem like quite a valid option for some people. All right? But what does the rational mind look like? Well, the rational mind, reasonable, is more intellectual by nature, looking to retain facts, check out scientific evidence, historical evidence, get all this information, get all this knowledge, and, being rational is fine. There's nothing wrong with being rational. But sometimes we can be a little bit too rational to the point where we become unrelational, right? If our rationalism comes at the point of our relationalism, you catch that one? All right? If our rationalism comes at the cost of our relationalism, then we compromise ourselves, we compromise our relationships, and we are relational human beings, right? We thrive when in the company of mature, healthy relationships. People, all right? So the interesting thing here, and this is where you're going to find a couple of similarities. So if you were to put a highly emotional person in a room with a highly rational person in the room, there's a potluck whether they connect and manage to get on. All right. But emotional people, how do you know they're emotional? Because they're going to tell you all about how they're feeling. How do you know how to recognize a rational person? Well, they're going to tell you all about what they're thinking. What they're thinking, how they're feeling. What they're thinking, how they're feeling. What they're thinking, how they're feeling. Some people live their lives inside of their heads, inside of rational thought. Other people live their lives inside of their emotions, immersed in their emotions, right? 2 different approaches, but 2 different parts of the mind, all right? So you've got to understand these 2 parts of the mind are within our overall mind, all right? So the question is, how do we live balanced lives? Because being fully emotional, that's not balanced. Being fully rational, that's not balanced. The balance comes about as we develop our wise mind. Right? Because again, the rational mind can also become disconnected from people. Right? I personally find it quite difficult to remain connected with rational people. Talking information, facts, statistics, debate. I would rather debate with you than understand you. Oh no, thank you. No, thank you. Pass. Don't get me wrong. Rational people can have strengths as well. Can be highly focused. Can be great achievers. Right? Pioneers, innovators. All right. So I'm not saying there's negatives here. I'm just saying that anything that's imbalanced can be better. All right. Hence the reason we look at the wise mind. Right. The wise mind is the reflective mind. The wise mind kind of like allows us to take center stage. All right. Where we can be rational sometimes. We can be very reasonable sometimes. We can be practical. We can be focused, and that's fine. Other times, we could be a bit more emotional. Emotional for the purposes of connecting with people, perhaps for empathically relating to people, sometimes for sympathizing. All right, that's okay. It just makes us human. It makes us human in a balanced way, but in wisdom. Wisdom, as we become naturally more reflective. We become reflective. Reflective doesn't involve thinking. Right? Reflecting does not involve thinking. Now, this is going to be a really challenging idea for some more rationally people. For more rationally people to kind of, consider here, right? Reflecting is less about thinking and more about looking and seeing. It's more about identifying. It's about observing. There's no room for thought in observation. There's no room for feeling in reflection, all right? Feeling and reflecting, thinking and observing don't go hand in hand, don't work together. And this is why the wise mind is this kind of component within itself. For me, if I'm thinking, I can think sometimes from solving problems, or it's kind of like thinking kind of happens here. For me, feeling, I'm not really sure where feeling comes from. Feeling can be everywhere sometimes, can't it? But wise is kind of like the back part of this bald head of mine. Kind of, if I'm kind of really reflecting some days, I'm kind of looking to identify the right next steps to take, or if I'm really listening to someone, doing my best to understand them, it requires concentrated effort, right? Not thinking. We can't think our way out of problems. We can only reflect our way out of problems, all right? So the wise mind's generally a bit more philosophical, where the emotional mind will say, I done this because I felt like doing this. The rational mind will say, well, I done that because I thought it was a wise thing to do. The reflective mind says, what is the wisest thing to do? What is the best next move that I should make? What are the wisest next steps that I should take? It's contemplative, it's growth-centered. What I don't want to do, I don't want to spend any more years of my life going round in circles. I want to progress, I want to advance, I want to become more effective for other people. So I want to make sure that if I'm making decisions, I'm making wise and well-considered ones.